I'd been sitting on this bench for a long time, and if there is one thing that never ceases to amaze me, it is the sheer, unadulterated gall of people who think they can walk into my courtroom and sell me a fairy tale. They get dressed up in their court clothes, which usually look like they were pulled out of a hamper 5 minutes before they arrived, and they stand at those podiums thinking that if they just project enough false sincerity, I'll magically forget how to spot a liar. But I wasn't born yesterday. In fact, I've forgotten more about human nature than most of these litigants will ever know. Today's disaster involved a young woman named Jessica Miller and her ex-boyfriend, Derek Stone. From the moment they walked in, the air in the room turned sour. Jessica was clutching a thick manila folder to her chest like a shield, her eyes red-rimmed from what I assumed was a morning spent crying over a tub of ice cream and old text messages. Across from her stood Derek, a man who clearly thought he was God's gift to women, wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too small and a smirk that was 5 sizes too big. He leaned against the podium with an air of practiced nonchalance that screamed, "I'm going to charm my way out of this." "Mr. Stone," I began, not even looking up from the paperwork yet, "if you don't stand up straight and take that ridiculous look off your face, your day is going to go from bad to catastrophic in record time. Do you understand?" He blinked, the smirk faltering just a fraction. "I'm just relaxed, Your Honor. I have nothing to hide." "You have a lot to hide, sir. Your character, for starters," I snapped, finally looking him in the eye. I could see exactly who he was in about 3 seconds. He was a mooch, a professional parasite. I've seen thousands of them. They find a woman who is a little bit lonely and a lot bit too kind, and they drain her bank account until there's nothing left but a pile of overdraft fees and broken promises. I turned my attention to Jessica. "Miss Miller, you are suing Mr. Stone for $5,000. You claim it was a loan for a car and some unpaid credit card debt. He claims it was a gift. Now, explain to me and keep it brief, because I have a very low tolerance for long-winded stories about feelings. Why you handed $5,000 to this man?" Jessica took a shaky breath. "Judge, we were together for 18 months. Derek lost his job, and he said his car was about to be repossessed. He told me that if I helped him out, he'd pay me back as soon as his big deal came through. He's a freelance consultant, or so he said. I used my savings because I thought we were building a life together." "Freelance consultant," I repeated. Looking at Derek, "What exactly do you consult on, Mr. Stone? How to avoid a day's work?" "I'm in tech infrastructure, Your Honor," he said, trying to regain his swagger. "The market is volatile." Jessica knew that. She wanted to support me. She told me, "Derek, baby, I've got you. Don't worry about the money." Those were her exact words. It was a gift from a loving partner. You can't sue someone for a gift just because you're mad that we broke up. "Don't tell me what the law is, sir. I tell you what the law is," I barked. "And don't call her baby in my courtroom. It makes my skin crawl. Now, Miss Miller, do you have anything in writing that says this was a loan? A text? An email? A carrier pigeon note? Anything?" Jessica fumbled through her folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Bird, my bailiff, grabbed them and brought them to me. I adjusted my glasses and began to read. Text messages are the greatest gift technology ever gave to judges. People lie, but their thumbs usually tell the truth in the heat of the moment. The messages were a masterpiece of manipulation. There was Derek complaining about how the system was out to get him. There was Jessica asking when he could start paying her back because she couldn't afford her own rent. And then there was the smoking gun. "I know I owe you for the car and the visa bill, Jess. I'm good for it. Once the Vegas contract signs, I'm paying you back every cent plus interest for being my rock." I looked up from the paper. Derek was staring at the floor, his ears turning a bright shade of red. The smirk was officially gone. "Mr. Stone," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous register, "I'm looking at a text message from your phone. You explicitly state, 'I know I owe you.' In my world and in the world of the law, the word owe does not appear in the definition of a gift. A gift is something given freely with no expectation of return. Debt, however, is exactly what you described here. So, are you calling yourself a liar, or are you calling the phone company a liar? I was under duress when I sent that, he stammered. She was hounding me about money every day. I only said that to keep the peace. I didn't actually mean it was a legal debt. Duress? I let out a sharp, dry laugh. Being asked to pay back money you borrowed is not duress, sir. It's an inconvenience to your lifestyle of being a deadbeat. You used this woman, you took her $5,000, you let her pay for your life, and the second she started asking for accountability, you hit the road. Am I right, Miss Miller? Yes, Judge, Jessica said, her voice stronger now. The day I told him I couldn't cover his phone bill anymore, he packed his bags and told me I was too negative and didn't support his energy. Then I found out he was already seeing someone else. I sat back and stared at Derek. The sheer audacity of these types always gets to me. They wrap their greed in energy and positivity to make the victim feel like the villain for wanting their own money back. It's a classic shell game. You're a real piece of work, Mr. Stone, I said. You've got a lot of nerve standing here talking about energy when the only energy you have is the kind that drains someone else's life force. Now let's talk about the credit card. Miss Miller, you say he used your card without permission after the breakup? He had the number saved on his Uber account and his food delivery apps, she explained. He spent another $800 in the week after he moved out before I realized and canceled the card. I looked at Derek. Is that true? Did you order sushi and car rides on her dime after you dumped her for not supporting your energy? It was an accident, he yelled, finally losing his cool. The app just defaulted to that card. I didn't mean to use it. You didn't mean to use it for a week? 7 days of accidental lobster rolls? I slammed my hand on the desk. You're lying, Mr. Stone. You're lying to me. You're lying to her. And you're probably lying to yourself in the mirror every morning. 7 days of accidental lobster rolls, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air like a bad smell. Mr. Stone, do you think I was born under a rock? Do you think I haven't seen 1,000 people just like you? You didn't forget which card was on the app. You knew exactly whose money you were spending, and you figured as long as the gravy train was still on the tracks, you'd ride it until the wheels fell off. I looked over at Bird. He was leaning against the wall, shaking his head. He's seen it all too, and he knew exactly where this was going. Let's look at the itemized statement for this accidental week, I said, pulling another sheet from the folder. Monday, Uber to a high-end lounge. Tuesday, DoorDash from a steakhouse. Wednesday, 3 different charges for a Vegas prep clothing site. Mr. Stone, did you think your energy needed a new wardrobe on Jessica's dime? Derek shifted his weight, looking more like a cornered rat than a tech consultant. I was prepping for a major networking event in Las Vegas. Your Honor, it was an investment. If I landed the contract, I was going to pay her back for everything, the car, the food, all of it. So it was a loan. I pounced. You just said I was going to pay her back. You don't pay people back for gifts, sir. You pay people back for loans. You just admitted on the record in front of a dozen cameras and a woman you've spent 18 months bleeding dry that this was a debt. Congratulations, Mr. Stone. You just talked yourself right into a judgment. No, that's not what I meant, he shouted, his voice cracking. I meant if I made it big, I'd be generous. I'd give her money because I'm a good guy. But legally, she has no right to it. Generous? I barked. Generous is buying someone flowers. Generous is picking up the tab for dinner. Generous is not using your ex-girlfriend's credit card to buy Vegas prep clothes after you've already dumped her. That's called larceny. In many jurisdictions, we call that a felony. You're lucky she's only suing you in civil court instead of standing behind a glass partition in a different kind of building. I turned back to Jessica. She was standing there, her hands gripping the podium so hard her knuckles were white. Miss Miller, did he ever go to Vegas? He did, Judge, she said, her voice dripping with bitterness. He went the weekend after he moved out. He posted photos on Instagram of himself at a VIP table with 3 other girls. He was wearing the clothes he bought on my card. When I commented on the photo asking for my money back, he blocked me and sent me a cease and desist letter he drafted himself. I looked at Derek. A cease and desist? For asking for her money back? Sir, you have the unmitigated gall of a palace guard. You steal her money? You go to Vegas to play big shot on her credit limit, and then you try to legally intimidate her for noticing? Who do you think you are, Steve Jobs? You're a guy who can't even afford his own sushi. The Vegas trip was a business trip, Derek insisted, his face a splotchy, angry red. I was meeting with high-level investors. I had to project a certain image. You don't understand the tech world, Your Honor. It's all about optics. Optics? I stood up slightly, leaning over the bench. I'll tell you what the optics are, Mr. Stone. The optics are that you are a 30-year-old man with the moral compass of a sewer rat. You are a mooch. You are a parasite. You found a hard-working woman, Miss Miller. You're a nurse, correct? Yes, Judge. I work 12-hour shifts at the trauma center, Jessica replied. A nurse, I said, looking back at Derek. She spends 12 hours a day on her feet, saving lives, dealing with blood and tragedy so she can put money in a savings account. And you, a strategic brand visionary, which is just a fancy way of saying you're unemployed and own a MacBook, decided that her hard-earned money was your personal slush fund. You spent her trauma center overtime on bottle service in Vegas. How do you sleep at night? I was going to make it all back, he yelled. The contract fell through. It's not my fault the market shifted. The market didn't shift, sir. Your character did, I snapped. Actually, I doubt it was ever there to begin with. Now, stand up straight. Stop fidgeting. You look like you have ants in your pants. We're going to talk about the car. I looked at the paperwork for the vehicle. A 2018 sedan. Jessica, you took out a personal loan for $5,000 to pay off the back taxes and the title fees so the car wouldn't be seized. Is that correct? Yes, Judge. He told me if the car was taken, he couldn't get to his high-level meetings and he'd never get the Vegas deal. I was scared for him. I didn't want him to fail. And Derek, I said, my voice turning into a low, icy hiss, where is that car now? Derek went quiet. He looked at his shoes. He looked at the exit. He looked everywhere but at me. I asked you a question, Mr. Stone. Where is the car that Jessica paid $5,000 to save? It is one. I had to sell it, he whispered. You sold it? Jessica shrieked. That car was in both our names. How did you sell it? I had a power of attorney, he muttered, from when we were together. I needed the cash to pay for the lawyer, for the cease and desist, and for some other expenses. I felt the heat rising in my chest. This was beyond a simple breakup. This was a systematic dismantling of another person's life for the sake of a few weekends of pretend wealth. You used a power of attorney from a defunct relationship to sell a car she paid to save, and then you used the proceeds to hire a lawyer to keep her away from you? I slammed my gavel down. The crack echoed through the room like a gunshot. You are not just a liar, Mr. Stone. You are a thief. You are a common, low-level crook with a shiny suit and a delusional ego. It was my car, he shouted. I was the primary driver. It was her money, I yelled back. Do you have the sales receipt for the car? How much did you get for it? $4,000, he said. And where is that $4,000 now? It's gone, Your Honor. Business expenses. Business expenses? I mocked. Let me guess. More lobster? Another VIP table? Maybe some more Vegas prep socks? You are a disgrace, sir. You stand here and try to justify your behavior with buzzwords and energy while you've essentially robbed this woman of her savings, her credit, and her peace of mind. I turned to Jessica. She was crying now. But they weren't the I miss him tears. They were the how could I have been so stupid tears. Miss Miller, look at me, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. Don't cry. You're a nurse. You're smart. You're capable. You made a mistaken judgment because you have a good heart. He doesn't have a heart. He has a cold-blooded calculation where a soul should be. Today, the calculation stops. He thinks he's a visionary? Well, I have a vision for him, and it involves a lot of zero-balance bank accounts. I turned back to Derek. Mr. Stone, You've spent the last 20 minutes trying to convince me that the world is a complicated place where gifts turn into energy and theft turns into optics. But I'm a simple woman. I see a debt, I see a liar, and I see a judgment. And trust me, you are not going to like my vision for your future. A power of attorney, I repeated, my voice dropping into a low, terrifying rumble. You used a document meant for trust and mutual care to dismantle this woman's financial life while she was busy saving lives in a trauma center. Sir, you aren't just a mooch. You are a predator. You waited until the relationship was over, used a legal loophole to liquidate her only asset, and then spent the proceeds on a lawyer to keep her from asking for what was hers? Do you have a soul, or just a series of strategic brand visions where your conscience should be? It was a legal sale, Derek shouted, his face now a deep, splotchy purple. The car was in my name, too. I had the right to sell it. I needed the money to survive because she cut me off. She left me with nothing, Your Honor. I had no place to live, no income, nothing. I had to do what I had to do. You had to do what you had to do, I barked, slamming my hand on the bench. What you had to do was get a job. What you had to do was stop eating lobster on a nurse's salary. What you had to do was act like a man instead of a parasite. You didn't have to steal her car. You chose to steal her car because you are lazy and you think the world owes you a living just because you can string 3 buzzwords together in a sentence. I turned back to the paperwork. Miss Miller, let's talk numbers. You're suing for $5,000, which is the maximum I can give you in this court. But from what I'm seeing, between the car taxes, the personal loan, and the unauthorized credit card charges, he owes you closer to $7,000. Is that correct? Yes, Judge, Jessica said, wiping her eyes. But I just want the $5,000. I just want to be done with him. I want to pay off the loan I took out for him so I don't have to think about his face every time I look at my bank statement. I understand, I said, my voice softening just a fraction. And believe me, after 10 minutes of looking at his face, I want you to be done with him too. Mr. Stone, do you have any proof at all that you ever contributed a single dollar to the household expenses during those 18 months? Rent, utilities, a pack of gum? I was building the brand, Derek yelled, waving his arms around like he was trying to take flight. The brand was our future. Every meeting I went to, every person I networked with, that was an investment for us. You can't put a price on the sweat equity I put into our potential empire. Sweat equity? I let out a sharp, biting laugh. The only thing you were sweating was whether or not the waiter would notice the name on the credit card didn't match yours. Sir, potential doesn't pay the light bill. Potential doesn't put gas in the car. And sweat equity in a brand that doesn't exist is just a fancy way of saying you sat on your couch and played video games while she worked double shifts. I wasn't playing video games, he screamed, his voice cracking. I was on LinkedIn. I was making connections. You're just a boomer. You don't understand how the digital economy works. It's about influence. It's about reach. Oh, I understand reach perfectly, I snapped, leaning over the bench until I was glaring directly into his eyes. I see you reaching into this woman's purse every time you get hungry. I see you reaching for her car title the second she stops paying your bills. I understand that kind of reach very well, Mr. Stone. It's the reach of a thief. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Derek was panting, his tie crooked, the visionary facade completely shattered. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had run out of people to trick. Bird, I said, my voice dropping back to a cold, professional clip. Do we have the bank statement showing the transfers from Miss Miller to Mr. Stone's account for the car taxes? Right here, Judge Bird said, handing me a stack of papers. I scanned them. 5 transfers, $1,000 each one labeled for Derek's car or tax payment. And here, I pulled another sheet, is the sale of the vehicle. $4,000 paid in cash to Derek Stone. Mr. Stone, Did you give Jessica a single penny of that $4,000? No, he muttered, looking at his shoes. I told you I had expenses. What expenses? I demanded. Show me a receipt. Show me a bill. Show me anything that isn't a bar tab or a hotel stay in Las Vegas. I don't have them with me, he stammered. They're at my office. You don't have an office, sir. You have a laptop and a delusion, I yelled. You stand here and lie to me about business expenses when we both know you spent that money trying to look like a big shot to a group of girls in a VIP lounge. You used her life savings to buy a weekend of pretend importance. It's disgusting. I turned to Jessica. Miss Miller, I'm going to make this very simple. He is a liar, he is a mooch, and he is a thief. He took advantage of your kindness and your hard work. But the law doesn't care about your broken heart. And it doesn't care about his brand. It cares about the money. And the money is clear. I picked up my pen. I could feel the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. Derek was vibrating with a mix of rage and panic. He knew the hammer was coming down, and he couldn't talk his way out of it this time. Mr. Stone, I said, looking him dead in the eye, you think you're a consultant? Well, I'm going to give you some free consulting. Your brand is currently insolvent scammer, and I'm about to put a very permanent label on it. You can't do this, Derek yelled, slamming his fist onto the podium. I'll appeal. I'll sue her for defamation. I'll destroy her reputation in the tech community. Sir, the only thing you're going to destroy is your own shoe leather when you have to walk home because you don't have a car anymore. I fired back. Sit down and shut up. I'm speaking. I turned to the judgment form. On the plaintiff's claim of $5,000 for the car loan and credit card debt, I find for the plaintiff in the full amount, $5,000 plus court costs plus interest. And I am referring the matter of the car sale and the unauthorized use of the power of attorney to the district attorney's office for an investigation into fraud and larceny. Derek's jaw literally dropped. He looked like he'd been hit by a bus. You're calling the cops? He whispered, his voice trembling. I'm doing my job, sir, I said, my voice cold as a winter morning in Manhattan. You thought you could use a courtroom to validate your theft? You thought I'd look at a hardworking nurse and a lazy mooch and say, oh, well, they were in love, so the money doesn't matter? You are sadly mistaken. Love is a feeling. $5,000 is a debt, and I deal in debts. I signed the paper with a flourish and slammed my gavel down. Judgment for the plaintiff. Get out of my courtroom, Mr. Stone, before I decide to have Bird escort you directly to the precinct. Derek stood there for a moment, frozen. Then he grabbed his briefcase and practically ran for the door, his Vegas prep suit flapping behind him. Jessica stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face, but this time she was smiling. Thank you, Judge, she whispered. Thank you for seeing it. I saw it the second you walked in. Honey, I said, now go back to that trauma center and keep doing the real work. And the next time a guy talks to you about sweat equity and brand visions, run the other way, fast. I watched her walk out, her head held high for the first time in 18 months. I sat back, the adrenaline of the confrontation slowly fading into the familiar satisfaction of a job well done. Bird, I said, straightening my robe. Yes, Judge? I need a coffee. And tell the next pair of litigants that if they even mention the word energy, I'm going to fine them for wasting my time. You got it, Judge. I looked down at the next file. Another day, another set of lies. But for now, the room was quiet. Justice had been served, the parasite had been removed, and the nurse was going home with her dignity intact.